Today we're putting together the ruins, and so what I've done already is gone ahead and scored along all the places that need scoring. I've cut along all the places that need cutting, and I've got all my pieces in my base here. And I'm just going to be following the instructions to put those things together. So if you don't know what scoring is, if you don't know what basing is, go back and watch our videos earlier on that have instructions for that specifically. Alright, to the instructions. Alright, so for the instructions, we've already done the first couple of steps in cutting and scoring. Now we move on to the next step, where we find RU1. Okay? Now we're supposed to glue down RU1 and then RU2 through RU12. So when we're gluing down, we make sure that our arrows are pointing the same way and that the ground textures line up, and that should solve a lot of problems. So this piece has the RU1 slot on it, and it's going to be glued here on the base. So we bend where we scored, and if we look at our PDF file or extra copy, we can see that the bend needs to go that way, and it needs to be glued down right here. And we can see too where the ground textures are going to line up, and so it's going to make it very easy for us to know where they should go. So a little glue on there, make sure it's just enough, and glue it down. The ground textures will line up great. If you're seeing double of anything or lines that don't feel like they're lining up, then you might need to move it a little bit and put it in another place. That being said, because of the printing process, sometimes things are 1/8 of an inch off or so, and that will mean that when you're gluing things to the back of something, it's more important to take a good hard look at what exactly is the intended function of the piece and decide if it's in the right place for that. So it requires a little more discrimination, a little more ability to tell what's going to happen with the pop-up, but it's well worth it. Alright, so RU3 and 4 is very similar to RU1 and 2. It's kind of the mirror wall section here. And so again, we're putting some glue on there, making sure that they line up with the ground textures. And there should be a couple of key blocks and patches of dirt and stuff. Just pay attention to the anomalies that allow you to line things up, and line things up on the anomalies, and the other stuff will line up too. Alright, so those two pieces are in place, and then we're going to want to glue down RU5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12. So let's get to it. 5, 6, 7, and 8 are these outer pillar support sections. And again, ground texture should line up perfectly when you glue it down, so you're not wondering, oh, is this the right place? No. You know it's the right place because it matches the underlying ground texture perfectly. And so you're like, oh yeah, that's the right place. Now, will the colors be exactly the same? Because these were digital prints, the colors are not, shade may not be exactly the same when you glue it down, but the line work will line up, and the shade will be pretty close. So again, yeah. And then RU7 and 8. shifting this way. Partially is because where my camera is. So put this over here to remind me that that is as far as you guys can see. And I'm working on this. Okay, this one. Yeah. Alright, so I've lined all those up. And while, you know, these should stay in place, and we'll go ahead and try folding everything up to see if it works at this point, because that's important. And I always like to push everything flat. Doesn't matter if you see stuff coming out on the edges, these will all be tucked in, so don't worry about that. But these central pieces should pop up. These ones won't pop back up yet. And then we've got these corner blocks, RU 9, 10, 11, and 12 to glue down. And 10. And 11 and 12. Again, carefully making sure that the ground textures line up. Alright, so that's 1 through 12. We'll let that dry while we look at the next part. Glue the support pillars in place, RU 17 through RU 20. The support pillars will go into these middle, they'll support the kind of central walkways within the structure. So 17, 18, 19, and 20. And you want to make sure the arrows on the sections are going the same way as the arrows that are on the other parts. So okay. And on these parts, we are gluing something, we're matching up a texture that was printed on the back with the texture that was printed on the front. So in those cases, the texture may not line up exactly, and might be an 1/8 of an inch off or something. So in those cases, pay attention to where the lines are on to where the markings are on the ground. Just the glue spots. Make sure that they're pretty close on the glue spots, and then fold it flat to see if it works. And if it works, then it works. If it doesn't work, adjust. And it, you know, for the most part, these are pretty forgiving designs. You should have very little trouble with them working. Glue S10 through S15. That's not right. It's the ruins. Okay. Alright, glue RU13 through RU16. Then glue the tops of the pillars to the inside platforms, RU29 through RU32. So, yes, I am 32. That's not true. I'm 33. Alright. So the inside pillar support here. I want to line that up with the lines there on the the top. And this is one that I would recommend putting into place, giving it a few seconds to dry while you put the other one in place, and then slowly confirming that everything folds flat. And additionally, you probably want to fold this centerpiece. You should have scored along this line so that it folds diagonally across the surface there. If it doesn't fold diagonally across the surface, then you're going to have some serious problems with this particular one. So I'm going to go ahead and glue these inner supports down, 31 and 32. You might need to get in there. It's kind of tricky, you know. Find a way to hold it in place. If you have to put a pin in there or something, find a way to hold some of these things in place so that they do dry in place for a few seconds. Usually with Elmer's glue, if you haven't put too much glue on there, which is sometimes the case with me, you only need to hold it for about 10 seconds, and that's generally a good enough hold to let it sit and dry on its own for a little bit. So, as you can see, I'm using a pen as kind of a extra long finger. If you happen to have long, skinny fingers, you could just use those. I do not. My fingers are... they're sculptor's hands, I think. What I like to call my short, stubby fingers. Alright. So, if you can tell that it's not holding its spot, put a little more effort into it. Get it to hold down. Okay. Those are all on. And then I'm going to glue RU21. This piece is just a panel piece, and its job is to ensure that when the statues fold up and down, they fold right. So it's just another piece to make sure everything works smoothly. And you can try working without it. My original prototypes never had this, but what this does is it just makes sure that the statues work perfectly when they're the crumbled statues here. So then we attach the outside patios. So we're bending these pieces into a nice little shelf, and we're gluing them into their places along the outside of this ruined temple. So with these ones, we're gluing front to front, so the textures will line up perfectly. Just line those right up and glue them on. This is really one of our most stable settings. You could put a lot of weight on these. Like, I just glued these together. I already feel confident putting a glue bottle on there and letting it hold. There's as many pewter figures as you can fit on these things. This will hold it. Okay, so you've glued those in place. Next, you glue in the statues, which is RU26 through RU28, and you're going to glue 26 in first, as it goes in the back. It's the lion with the podium. And just glue it in there so it matches the ground texture, and the way these pop up is that they lean against the wall. So you want to make sure that for the first fold, they're leaning against the wall, because if they're not, then it could cause them to crumple unnecessarily, where they would never crumple normally, but they might crumple the first time because they'd have nothing to push them down at the right angle until they're leaning back already. Makes sense? Makes sense to me. That makes a lot of sense to me. So this one, sometimes it's tricky to find the right ground texture. Just keep looking for those rocks. Where's Waldo of rocks, and find the right spot to glue it down. Promise you it is there, and I promise you that if you glue it down on that spot, then it will be a lot better than if you didn't glue it in the right spot. Okay, so get the statues in place. Got one more little piece here that I love. This is a rock that goes right here, right in this spot, and you just glue it on there. It's not going to match the ground texture. Just glue it on the edge so it looks like a rock hanging off the edge. I'm very proud of that rock, because from the right angle it looks 3D. So happy about that. Alright, so there we are. We've put all the pieces together. It's time to see if it folds flat. First fold flat, we want to do it gently. We've got a lot of new pieces in here that we haven't folded, so we want to fold slowly. Watch for potential problems where something might be coming apart and about to bend. Looks like everything is doing what it's supposed to do. Get a little resistance. Might feel like it's breaking. It's not. It's just a little micro adjustments of a half, 32nd of an inch or something that need to be bent a little bit right into place, and voila, the ruined setting. So, hope you had fun making it. Sure had a lot of fun making it and showing you how. So, thanks.